Yeah. So let's get started. Tonight we are talking two topics, and there's sort of a yin and yang type thing because we're going to be talking about boarding actions and damage control in Star Citizen, and we're sort of going to frame this in kind of like a scenario light discussion. We're going to start with boarding actions uh, from the sort of perspective of the potential boarders, and uh, we'll go from there. And then once we get to the second part where we're talking about um, uh, damage control, Atira and I are not as familiar with damage control as Nightcob is because Nightcob is in the Navy. He works on a sub. Damage control parties are a huge part of what they do, and that I've spent plenty of time on ship, but when they're doing the drills for that sort of stuff, it's more of a all right, Marine, go lie in your bed and stay out of the way, and we'll come get you if the ship starts sinking, um, or if we need extra hands for some reason. So we had as we always do with the episodes, we sort of create like a resource document where we put a whole bunch of resources that we can find on the topics that we're going to be discussing, and we go through and we sort of ask questions that we want to sort of I guess you could say answer in regard to those topics. And the first in regards to boarding, starting us off. Um, the first thing is we need to sort of discuss why are we boarding a ship. What purpose does boarding a ship in Star Citizen have? What is our end goal? And so I wanted to we'll cover a couple of different things, but the if for gameplay reasons, I wanted to ask each of you, what your you what if it's you, what is your primary function for boarding a ship? And let's start with you, Night Cobb. What is your if you're going to be doing boarding, why are you boarding someone else's ship?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about purpose, or you're talking
Hmm.
about,
Yeah,
why I'm
your
doing
reason,
it,
your motivations.
my motivation is, I mean, in the game, money and the experience. I mean, like I love the Merc style combat, so it's more along the lines of, coming in to extract a target, extract information, take the ship. Maybe it's intelligence, you know, intelligence gathering one day when like data running is a thing.
Hmm.
And data running is like physicalized on a a chip or card or something like that. um, Something that's sensitive that you can't rely on, like the eventuality of ship death, whether it's that soft death or whatever, to maintain whatever is inside the ship that you really want, and you want it intact and you want it in good condition, um, available to you after the contest.
Okay, yeah. So you don't want to run the risk of destroying the ship and damaging whatever your target is, whether it's a
Yep.
bounty or sensitive information you're trying to recover, as part of a mercenary contract. Yeah, those are really good reasons to be boarding someone's ship versus we're just going to shoot it full of holes. And Atira Kelt, as far as you know, for you and your gameplay reasons, what sort why would you be interested in boarding someone's ship? What would be your motivations, your goals?
I should turn
Oh.
my mic back on so that you don't have to hear my coughing. Uh, well, I think Nightcop hit on a good one. Intelligence. I think from a lawful org type perspective, if you're trying to track down pirates or whatever, drug runners, whatever you're trying to do, other players, it would be cool if there was a log, a black box you could pull
Hmm.
and then evaluate and see all their jumps, like their last 15 jumps or something, right?
Oh, okay. I see
So
what you're
like,
saying.
and then you could pull that. You have to do the analysis and figure out, okay, well, I think maybe this is where they're based out of. And if you recall, right, they said that eventually we'll be able to drop beacons in space that we can then jump to, and they'll stay until they're destroyed. So we can have org focused or personal level beacons that we control the accesses to. So maybe that transponder data for that beacon is inside that flight plan. So now you could put together a strike team after boarding this ship and then go raid their base as well and go straight to it if you figure out which of those points is theirs. And then the one that I wrote in our notes is salvage, right? I mean,
Yeah.
My hope is that eventually CIG gets to the point where you pull components, you can then, and I don't know how they're going to let us do this, because you're really talking about transitioning a component, a physicalized component, into the inventory screen so that you can then put it on your ship, right? So I mean, if you think about it, you go in, you freaking take down some Perseus, Hammerhead, even something smaller, right? You pull all their components out. If they've upgraded their ship, you might now have a bunch of Class A military, Class A civilian, Class A stealth components that you can then turn around and sell or use to equip your org, right? And then transfer that stuff over and then equip it. So I think that's another fantastic thing. And of course, the piratey answer is cargo and, all that stuff.
Cargo and you can think about, like, we have the 890 jump mission, and they're trying to capture high value targets. That goes both ways. But Atira, I like your idea. Yeah, and data. And you guys both kind of covered data, but in different ways. Whereas Nightcob, we're retrieving data for someone that says, hey, we want what's on this ship data wise. Whereas Atira Kell is looking at it, okay, there's data here that can progress us on a mission that we're already on. And that sort of makes me think about how the bounty missions for like the Arlington gang go up, 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 and up. You take down a lower level bounty, and you capture that bounty, but then you rifle through all their information that's stored on their ship in order to try and backtrack to get to the head of the organization, the bigger fish that you want to fry. And I think it's a really good reason to board someone's ship, because with the way soft death for now. Uh-oh. Can you guys hear the kids screaming in the background?
Yeah, it's fine. Man.
Mom must be giving him vegetables that he does not like. But
oh yeah, that's quality.
Yeah,
but he hasn't acquired the taste for crayons yet. That's fine.
Not yet, and we have this huge supply, and we don't know what to do with them because I can't eat them all myself.
Yeah, well, they come in like 94 in a box, 96 in a box.
Depending on how big of a box you get and what's available at Costco.
That's fair.
I don't know what she's doing to him.
Pension him.
I'm sure it's fine.
To go back to what you were saying, though, they've said, right, that you could have like an NPC nemesis or something, right, where you encounter the same NPC in an area over and over again, and that guy is talking smack to you, and if he disables you and like, I don't know, whatever. I don't know how that's going to work, right? Because if he disables you, why would he not just like blow you away and end you if you're in a fight or something? But this idea of the nemesis, right? And then you might there might be some for you individually as a character, as a player, if you hunt down that guy using like other members of his gang to track him down, him, her, then maybe there's some sweet loot there that's just for you as a player because that was like tagged as your nemesis. So there's just some loot there, right? That's like really cool. Like I loved it in the in the Crusader missions, the platform missions, right? You could loot the boss's armor.
Yeah,
and it was unique armor sets and stuff. I don't know, just something like that. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah,
Tree, I'm surprised you didn't say rescue ops, by the way.
Oh, I haven't given mine yet.
No shit, did I? Man, sorry, jumped ahead.
But
good job.
Like, from a largely lawful perspective, those are really good. Those are really good reasons to board someone's ship. Whether it's you're retrieving data, sort of bounty hunting, mercenary work. You're rescuing somebody who's being held hostage. Because that's going to be a thing, folks. It already is in game. You're using it to sort of get information to lead you on the trail to the ultimate goal. The bigger fish you want to fry. it could be like you're talking about, you want to acquire something else that's on the ship, the components, you are doing it for, whether it's lawful or not, profitability, you're okay, we've disabled this ship and we want to board it because if we just blow it up, that's a whole bunch of money just thrown away. And maybe you scanned it and you're like, oh, I want that. That might be, that juice might be worth the squeeze. And for me, for my gameplay, and not to be too obvious, but there's um, I think of sort of the Coast Guard, who is um, flying out on their helicopters and stuff, and lowering a rescue swimmer onto a ship that's in distress in order to get the crew off the ship before it capsizes. Where whether that target ship was damaged in a firefight or some sort of environmental occurrence, because we're going to have those things where you fly through an area and you get struck by space lightning or flying debris in a sort of it's not an atmosphere but a turbulent area of space where there's a lot going on. If you think about the coil from the Squadron 42 vertical slice, there are lots of areas within Star Citizen that are very much like that, where without getting someone firing a shot, your ship could be severely damaged, and left adrift in space, and maybe you don't have the means to get yourself underway, and where you're you know sort of referencing to what Nightcop does, but your cooler isn't keeping up with power, and you're like, oh gosh, if we shut down power, we're going to lose life support and we're going to die out here. But if we keep running the power plant, we can't keep it cool, and it's gonna you're responding to a rescue situation in order to get the people off, and bring them home. Or you're either rescuing the people from the ship, or maybe you are bringing what you need on board the ship, especially a larger ship, in order to get them underway again. But the ship is damaged. They've got minimal comms. They don't have power, and you need to navigate through whatever this dangerous environment is in order to get on board the ship and maybe pry the door open. And they on the other side of the air like, oh, thank goodness you're here. Please tell me you have a replacement this or that. And you go on board and you help them get their ship functional again. And then they you escort them back, fly them back to safety. Those are scenarios that I could definitely see in Star Citizen. They're things that are talked about in lore. Obviously, my preferred is there are people on board who are injured, and I want to go rescue them. But after that, it's like you're talking, Nightcop. The idea of boarding.
So nice.
Yeah, the idea of boarding in order to take out a bounty target. Or to whether it's an actual bounty or it's straight up mercenary work of any stripe. That's the kind of the mission isn't go blow up the ship. The mission is retrieve what's on the ship or bring this person in, bring them in warm. There's a bunch of different scenarios you could think of. So the next question, and it's sort of general, but I wanted to talk to you guys what your thoughts are on the challenges of boarding a ship in different states. And by states, the ship is the target ship is it's under power, it's underway. It might still have some teeth. Maybe it's minimized to somewhat, but it's not just dead in space. And then the flip side of that is the ship is disabled, and maybe it's either temporary or via like distortion weapons, and you have a short window to get on board and achieve the mission or further disable them, or you've inflicted severe permanent damage, kind of like the soft death. And so Atira, regarding those two sort of examples, disabled or under power and underway, what would be the challenges that you can think of off the top of your head regarding boarding in those sort of scenarios?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna pass. Night cop. No, I'm kidding.
You don't get to pass.
No, no.
No. Well,
Mandatory,
I mean,
sir. Mandatory.
Yeah,
just
I'm not playing charades, man.
talking about no power, right? I mean, or loss of power. I mean, challenges are going to be getting doors open, right? Getting airlocks open. So they it'll be interesting to see how they sort out the Legionnaire, right? So if you put a ship into a downed state and its power plant is not generating power to the ship, can the Legionnaire power locally that door to open it? Right? I don't think so, but maybe. They've already talked about they're having purpose-built breaching charge containers in the Legionnaire. So I mean, the idea would be you just blow it open. Okay. Well, again, kind of getting after what you're talking about. If you're going to rescue someone, or if you are going to salvage, the best way to go into a ship is probably not with explosives. Like, hey, I'm here to rescue. Clack, clack, clack. And watch the C4 explode on the side of their ship and send it off into space as they.
Well, especially because you don't know the state of the interior of the ship. Maybe
it's still sealed. I don't know.
That airlock might not be closed. And so you blowing it, could you could risk decompression. That may be a good thing. That may not be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think so. One of the things I had thought about was some type of jaws of life. Right, something that you can attach, and it could be magnetic, right? So you come up, pull this thing out, attach it, it then magnetically adheres and pulls the door apart, right? Or I don't know. I mean, not all doors open that way, so maybe there's something you would have to do to one of the ones that swings out, because that's they have like crap tons of different doors, right? But
yeah, because it's not
so
just
there's
getting through the first door. There's
right, it's getting through all the
that.
subsequent doors, yeah. So I mean, the first door might open and swing out, and then there's another set of doors like this. Or I can't remember, is the Hammerhead, did the doors open with two small doors, or is it one big one? I don't remember. Anyway, I think some of them are larger. Anyway, the point is you gotta get through all these doors somehow, and I don't think breaching charges for every one is the right answer. So that's your first challenge. And then, of course, that just gets you into the ship. Now you're going to have to EVA. I mean, you just decompressed part of the ship. So now you in theory need to close that. Right? Because now you got, in theory, especially if you're on a rescue mission, you don't know if everybody is compressed,
Yeah.
the rest of the ship is compressed or not. So now you got to close that so that you can repressurize the room you're in so that you don't kill everybody when you open the next door. You run into a lot of challenges there. So I think some type of jaws of life situation would be preferable for most situations, actually. The only time you would want to hard breach a door would be, if you're doing privateering operations and you don't care if the crew dies. So you just blow that door because it's like, I mean, for me, it's privateering. For a pirate, it's pirating. You don't care if they die per se. You just want to get into their ship, secure the ship, and then take everything associated with the ship. So that's breaching charges. That's going in hard. And then for everything else, though, it doesn't make sense. And I get that you can hack, but if there's no power, then you can't hack, right?
That's one thing that when the Legionnaire came out, I was like, okay, the hacking's great if the ship is under power, but I assume that you will need whether, because the ships are going to have batteries, and so you'll have some battery backup power. The question is,
is that localized to that region though? Because think about it, they're talking about, wow, I'm going to have all these breakers and the relays, and okay, well, so if the relay to that section of the ships you're going in is blown out, then whatever battery backups, because those are not, well, I don't know. Nightcab, you could tell me, do you guys have batteries all over the damn ship that power different parts of the ship? Probably not. They're probably like in one centralized place, right?
Yeah, so there's a central emergency ship's battery. Now, all ships are built on a system of how it deals with battle damage, what we call selective tripping. So basically, the components that are most likely to suffer, like the smaller components like doors and everything like that, are supposed to be like these relays. Like the idea is, okay, well, the relay should go first and it should trip first locally whenever there's damage local to, the component supplied by that relay. And it should end there when the relay trips.
Mm-hmm.
So if the door takes damage, relay trips, nothing powers that door, but all of the other doors still receive power, is the idea. There's
To
also
me, it's almost like
some
stopping bleeding on somebody who's had like an amputation. You're putting a tourniquet on above, and you're everything below isn't going to function. Whether it was the original thing in the first place. Like you said, the door
Yeah,
took
that's the idea.
damage. Yeah,
So somebody in
that
the chat said that they showed a tool that pries open doors. I don't remember that. I remember the salvage tool. I
the
remember
well, it's one
there's
of
like
the
a
links,
rifle sized
and
things.
there's you have the cutting tools, and they had in
Right.
that video, they talked about a breaching charge, but some of the other concepts don't look like a breaching charge. They look like something that would be almost like a pneumatic hydraulic type device that would pry the door open. But they didn't talk about that being one of the devices. They just showed it, and so I'm hoping, like you were talking about, we get things like that because explosive might not be a good idea. They've got a lot of utility items in the work, but for me, for my purposes, if I'm rescuing somebody, I just want to pry the door open enough to get in there and get to them. Especially if I have the ability to maybe pry it open, get in there, and close it behind me. um, as part of a rescue, to maintain that integrity of the door if possible. Whether that's
That assumes no hostility, though. Like you don't
yeah,
expect hostility because
yeah,
you make yourself vulnerable
oh
if
Yeah.
you're
yeah,
doing like a slow opening of a door and stuff like that. And
hmm
hostile forces have had a chance to literally just set up with a light machine gun pointed at the small entryway. We see that with Jumptown, 2.0 in its
Well,
current
that's what
state.
people do with
Prior to
the medical beacons right now
318.
all the time. It's
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
you're baiting people.
And the way to get through, or a lot of people have done with and had some meager success, and not without casualty, is when they cycle into the airlock and that door opens, they're tossing grenades. They already had grenades ready
Hmm.
because it's shock and awe. That's the best way to defend against, well, to really, I guess, attack against people that are encroached like that. And
I hope that
you know
armor is really good armor because
I honestly, I think that's a realistic thing you're going to have to look at with boarding in a hostile environment. Outside of you bring up a lot of great points though, Atira, with if you don't know that everybody, especially if you're going in for a rescue or a high value target, you don't know that everybody's, rigged for vacuum. So if you breach and you decompress a space, then you potentially sacrifice your high value target. But you've got to know that, like, if you've given them any kind of time and or warning to defend against boarding, like
Hmm.
they're set up. If they're any kind of equipped, you've got like three people, two people crouched, two people standing, two people kneeling, from multiple directions, literally just pointed at the, one or two entrances that are viable to a ship if they have that kind of firepower available to them. And your first two guys in, are basically sacrificial pawns that you're hoping to be able to revive with a med gun after they toss a grenade and hopefully, get them
which is
to.
why I want to draw about a proper boarding ship that you can use by puncturing the hull at any point.
Yeah, like the Vandal use, and that I
Yeah,
mean that might be a
you
thing
shouldn't
where
be
we can
you
do
shouldn't be
freeform
restricted.
cutting. Yeah,
I
because
mean,
they
free
have talked
form
about.
cutting would be fine. Yeah,
Mhm.
but you should not. They shouldn't restrict us on that to just those narrow passageways. To get into
Yeah.
the ship. If you plan ahead and you have a ship that can carry these pods, and when you take a ship down and you want to board it, there's no reason why you should have to dock.
Hmm.
Right? Just slam into it. Take punch through the hull. Freaking opens up. Everybody goes out.
Well, here's the good news. in my opinion, and kind of why I don't want. I mean, I'm okay with the system as is if they use it only hatches only. Even with the relatively small amount of hatches on most ships. That's how it is on a submarine. 3 hatches. That's all you get. There's no other way into the boat. Ultimately, though, what it depends on is how organized and how quick to react and how effective a defense, the ship can put up, the crew, I should say, of the ship being attacked can put up under duress. And, that's kind of like now you're entering into the sweaty, PvPers. If they're training that way, like, hey, armory's over here, we're being boarded, and they could communicate effectively to set up, a good defense around those multiple entry points potentially. Because they ideally, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, third person camera being what it is, they're probably going to know exactly what hatch you're going to. And I don't think there's much we can do about that. But, the idea would be, real life scenario, they wouldn't know which hatch you're going to pick. So you got to guard multiple, and you got to coordinate that. But knowing what they're going to know, they still have to make sure everybody's armed in the right position and ready to go. So really the key thing is being effective and quick with your boarding action, because you're trying to breach, get in, get what you need, and hopefully stop them from getting set up.
Yeah. Well, and
that's your best bet.
Yeah, you talked about grenades, and that brings up a challenge I don't think a lot of people have considered is with Star Citizen and what CIG is doing with the room system. If your ship still has some power, or you have the ability to do it, and you're getting boarded, the defenders can remove the atmosphere in the ship, particularly in the areas where they're expecting to be boarded. If there's no atmosphere, you have to have an atmosphere to really have the concussive force of an explosion. If there's no atmosphere, you don't have any transmission of sound.
Wow, there are plenty of devices you could have that don't require.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying, like the
oxygen to
traditional
create a boom.
concussion grenade or a flashbang is going to have limited effect because of the lack of an atmosphere. If they're able to do that, and your one of the major ways in which you take damage from a grenade isn't just the shrapnel of a frag grenade, isn't just the shrapnel, but the shockwave passing through your body. If there's no shockwave, you're or very minimal shockwave, because there's no atmosphere for it to travel through, your ability to do that sort of thing. Like for me, I'm thinking, sort of a stun grenade, but not in like the, like a popper, but it's more stun in like the electric weapons we have. I forget what they call them, but it arcs out electricity like a taser, out, in an area around it, in order to, maybe you can't take everybody down, but you can disrupt them enough in order to slow down their reactions and their responses to you. And where are we? So with the state of the ship, if they're disabled, everybody's like, oh, if they're disabled, I'll just be able to dock my ship to them, or pull up next to them in EVA and then cut my way in, hack my way in, or whatever. But they already have it in game to some extent, and it's going to continue. Even if you're disabled, you maintain some momentum. And if you disable a ship and they are in a roll, part of the crew, part of the ship.
Yeah. That was my mantra on my last boat, because I was there for a really long time. Like, I'd outlasted all but 5 other sailors and a crew of like 150.
Mm-hmm.
People kept coming on board.
Thank you for the follow. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming and hanging out. But those are the things where it's like, okay, you want to dock with a ship, and you have to. There was a really great video that somebody did where they sort of mimicked the what was that space movie where like the
That's
the
helpful.
ship is the ship is falling, and they're trying to dock with it, and then it's like falling and spinning into the atmosphere. They recreated that with the sound and everything. It was an amazing video, but they did it with
Talking about
a
Supernova?
no,
Is
it
that
was
Supernova with James? Oh my God, one of the Brat Pack, James Spader.
no, it was a more recent movie. But it was a very dramatic part of the movie where the ship, or maybe it was
Oh,
they had two.
Interstellar.
Interstellar. There you go. That scene.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Good. Thank you, Ghost. Um, Somebody actually did that in Star Citizen with a Pisces, trying to land it as the Carrack is falling, through gravity towards the planet, and it's spinning. Okay, well that really makes it very challenging for whatever ship you're using to try and dock, because we do have one of the big things for the Legionnaire is it does have a ubiquitous docking collar. It's meant to be able to dock to the large capital class docking collars as well as the smaller ones. And that docking collar also has things within it, as it expands, there's cover that can like pop up, so you can use that in order to fight your way onto the ship you're docking with. But there's going to be, we have all the other ships with docking collars, the Cuddy Blue and Cuddy Red, the Carrack has them, the Constellation, all these ships have docking collars, and eventually you're going to be able to, have some sort of telescoping thing that goes from one ship to another. It's not just going to be the Legionnaire. The Legionnaire is just more versatile. But if the ship that you're trying to dock with is still moving, whether it's going in a straight line or it's in some sort of roll because they're doing evasive maneuvers, when they lost power, if it continues with that, that presents a very challenging scenario for boarding, for just even getting connected, regardless of how you're going to make your way in. And that's, it brings me back to the sort of Coast Guard idea of they're trying to either, or, even on like Navy ships, with helicopters trying to land on a flight deck in, heavy sea states, and the flight deck is moving like this, and you're trying to land a helicopter. Or if the ship is rolling over waves like that, and you're trying to lower a person onto the deck and not have them just get absolutely smacked in the side of the head by the ship itself. That's super, super challenging.
Can confirm, seen a lot of small boat transfers, even recently, almost go awry thanks to a rogue wave.
Yep. Yeah, that stuff happens now. And
does the Legionnaire not have a tractor?
There's no tractor beam on the Legionnaire. And so that's something that you have to consider, do you have to bring an SRV in order to arrest their what would be the flight terminology? Their flight, their movement in order to safely dock them, or do you have a rock solid pilot who can manage to do that? So that's the sort of thing that, for me, as someone who is hoisted in and out of helicopters on a very regular basis, I do it onto the ground. And sometimes the ground has a slope, or there's things on the ground that might get in the way, but the ground isn't moving, and so that's an insane challenge for me when I see those videos, especially of the Coast Guard, but Navy pilots as well. That's just nuts. And it's a similar thing in Star Citizen. But so they're, even though they're disabled, you might still have that challenge, and if they're still under power, how do you that's going to be really tricky in order to dock with somebody who's still moving and still fighting you. And I don't think that the concept art within the Legionnaire, with the Legionnaire trying to pull up alongside of an Idris, I don't think that was by accident. I think they gave them an idea because they have an idea of what might be occurring, and there's going to there's probably methods where you can either blind the ship so they don't know that you are coming up on them. It also goes back to an interesting part of the hacking conversation with the Legionnaire is when they talked about hacking gameplay with the gameplay design teams. They talked about being able to hack a ship. It would be really challenging in order to disrupt components and systems within the ship. Whereas John Crew is just the ship guy. He said that the Legionnaire would only be able to hack the or the docking permissions. And so there's a sort of disconnect between the two teams as to what hacking will entail and what the capabilities will be. And I think hacking is a really along with being very maybe diligent in your disabling of a ship in order to almost bring it to a crawl before you board it. As far as disabling thrusters, I think that's
Better
going to be
use of
a
the
tactic.
SRB.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be a tactic
Or
that
you
you
got to
might need to
have,
consider.
or you actually have good grief, a cutlass on hand that can slow the roll.
Yeah, it might just take longer with a smaller tractor beam, that sort of thing. Because EVAing over to a ship that's moving, especially if it's in a spin, trying to, that's pretty scary to me, from a medic standpoint. But it's also a challenge, a scenario in game that I'm like, that's super cool. No one's ever done that, and we have the ingredients to have those sorts of things occur. Where you have to plan that out.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So I just
And
looked at the Inside Star Citizen weapon of choice. That's what I've been doing over here quietly. That talked about all the FPS tools that they were talking about, the
the
two-handers that you'll have
deployables
to
and
carry.
stuff, and yeah,
Yeah.
And they don't.
Breach and charge, all that.
They have the crossbow, they got the breach charge, they got the cutting tool, and they got the tractor beam. And then they talk about the handheld pistol-sized med gun, and then the medical attachment for the multi-tool. I don't see anything specific to this, and this was the only time I remember them
yeah.
really talking about
The
additional tools. So
it's the concept art that they have for different ones, where it's like, okay, this one looks different than that one for like the door type
sure,
stuff.
but
And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
but they don't
there's
specifically mention it, and that's the
well,
issue. Is like, okay, not confirmed.
yeah. So some of them look like they could have things that pull stuff
Mhm.
apart, but but it's just a list with numbers next to them. It's just like a series of concepts. So
Yep.
anyway,
And we talked about how you get aboard. You're either you can be docking with an airlock. You can potentially puncturing the hull. Whether it's via the Vandal have boarding spikes. And I think potentially we could end up having something like that on the human side of the game, as well, like Atiria you were talking about, as well as potentially freeform cutting to cut your way into the ship, because I think that would be a really good way to get to where you want to go, rather than having to fight your way through the ship. You cut your way directly into engineering. Yeah, I think it's a good possibility. We talked about EVA, and then there's always the option that is mentioned specifically in the lore for the Terrapin, how is used to stealthily sneak up on larger ships and basically land in the hangar. And that's something on an Idris. If the doors are open,
yeah,
who knows what the potential
we
will
only
be
have
for.
one ship that's really going to work on though, and that's the Idris.
Mm-hmm. For now.
I mean, for now, sure.
Yeah.
So if you want to like try and go after a Bengal that's active,
Mm-hmm.
knock
a
yourself
Kraken,
out, enjoy
trying to insert your people onto the flight deck and then have them
onto the
fight their
flight
way
deck.
down into it. Yeah.
But I mean,
That's not a bad idea.
I think trying to drop people on a flight deck, you'd be better off with the Valkyrie than you would a Terrapin.
I think so too. Yeah, Valkyrie.
I mean, you got a bigger exit,
Yeah.
bigger exit point. You could
Or
potentially
a steel.
shut up. Gosh,
No?
no. I liked the
Aw.
idea of the UH-1. I liked the idea of it, and then
Oh, you just didn't like the execution.
I just didn't know the execution was fine. I didn't like the price. That's
Yeah.
that was the only thing that turned me off of that.
Just buy it in game, kids. Just buy it in
Yeah.
game.
Just buy it in game.
They didn't want you.
The,
They didn't want you to spend real money on it. Maybe that's just their way of telling you that.
But yeah, I think if you're going on a Kraken, it'd be better to. I mean, I guess in theory you could try and sneak in on an 890. I guess it depends really on how they adjust large ship hangar doors for that mission with the Terrapin. So like, of course, you'd have to be a pretty big dumbass if you're sitting there flying your 890 jump and you see a Terrapin tootle a little down and then sneak into your
It makes
your
me wonder
hangar
what
bay
they're
that's
going
right
to
in front
do
of you.
with
Oh,
stealth
man, did you close
because
the hangar? No, man, did you?
No, did you? No, I could swear I just saw
Where's-
something go in the hangar.
Shit.
where's the
But see,
garage door remote? Has anyone seen it? Yeah.
No.
But you know what I'm saying? There's
Yeah.
not a lot of ships that would work on. You got,
Mhm.
you know, they did show the 2 larger capital ships plus the Bengal, right? That's a yes. The Idris, yeah, sure. Now, if you can, you know, if through the use of your data spike missiles, right, that they claim that they're going to give us one day, you could then override hangar doors.
Yeah.
That's
Use,
something that
you
I was
know,
thinking about
you know,
with hacking, because you could use a Legionnaire. If hacking is what the gameplay teams think it's going to be, what they
no,
are
but a
intending for.
I think the Legionnaire has to be in contact. The idea with a data spike missile is that it basically
No, I
strikes
think
the hull,
the
it
Legionnaire
embeds, and then
is remote.
you
Just
think it
based off-
is?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the Q&A again, but you know, if you could do that to hack a door open, maybe it's the hangar door, and then you fly the Legionnaire right into the hangar, and everybody disembarks and starts shooting. You know, or maybe you know you get into the hangar, and you know
Also, a
you have,
really small debarkation point for the Legionnaire, though.
yeah, and
So
you know
if you're gonna do that, send in somebody larger with a bigger door to let more people out simultaneously. Then
have them
Yeah.
follow
You're
you.
gonna. It's. I'm telling you, it's the reality is going to be the first few people are going to go down, and you're going to have to accept that the next 3 people are going to have to kill whatever's in the hallway that was prepared for you, and then revive the 3 people that are incapacitated,
unless they're
who hopefully
truly
aren't fully dead. So
yeah.
Yeah, because that's one thing that I think a lot of people have missed is the lore surrounding the Terrapin and the what's the Asperia one?
Prowler.
The Prowler.
Yeah.
I always forget
they-
about the Prowler.
The Prowler's too big. That's a big ship.
It is.
That's
and
I mean,
the
it's a
Prowler.
Valkyrie.
The
Huh?
Prowler is
It's
a
a Valkyrie.
dropship, but it's also in lore. It's
True,
meant to
yeah.
be a boarding ship where those things on the side allow it to like essentially gravitate to the hull of a ship
Yeah.
and then
okay.
you know, glide along it, you know, and then the borders are, you know, like hop out EVA, the magnetic boot onto the side of the ship or whatever. But that's how the Tavaran boarded capital ships during the Tavaran Wars, is they would sneak up on them, or you know maybe the other thing you can think about is the way they've talked about with radar and sensing, and you have all this clutter during a battle. If your ship can close with a larger ship during a
Only
battle,
if they
you
do
know,
EW the way I tell them to.
yeah, you know, it could be you could use the detritus, the flotsam and jetsam of you know destroyed and damaged ships, you know, in order to cover your approach. You know, I could see that, you know, especially with a large fleet battle. You know, whether that's something that occurs in the PU or not, I don't know. But you know, the fact that there's been multiple instances within the lore of them talking about, you know, stealthily boarding a capital ship, both by the UEE and by the Tavaran, with ships that we have right now. It makes you wonder what their plans are for stealth and for being able to, you know, overcome those sorts of things. Because right now there's no way, you know. Oh,
Did you mean your stream to say continuing the saga of Conrad Centurion Star Sector?
whoops, I did not. That's why. See, I forgot to change it. Son of a biscuit.
I know. I just saw Drew's post and I was like, I need to look at the. Oh, yep, no. No.
I always forget that. There should be a reminder.
That's okay. I
Thank
do that
you.
too.
However, dry.
Be playing DCS and people will be like, this doesn't look anything like Star Citizen, and I'll be like, damn it.
Shut up,
You're
man.
right. I'm flying the Apache today. I don't know what to tell you.
Star Citizen's got helicopters in space. What do you
Yeah,
want?
318's not live. I don't know what you want from me. It's wishful thinking.
Gosh, I need 318 to come out. I have the PTU downloaded, but I kind of want to experience it in live.
Amen.
And you know, but
I wonder if that updates
gosh.
live or if other people see it.
Yeah.
See, we probably would have more people watching if I had changed it, but I'm a damn fool and forgot about it.
Nah,
I forget that.
it doesn't do it live, but if you refresh the page, it does.
Yeah, it's okay.
Lame.
Yeah.
Oh, it did. See, Drew,
Yeah.
said it did.
Thanks for looking out. however you say your name. Sorry, I have no idea how to
Churro.
say that.
I'm glad
Just
it's not just me
churro.
that looks at that and
Churro.
just struggles immediately.
He says he everybody says it differently, and he enjoys hearing people struggle. It's fine.
I definitely hope we get ballistic shields for personnel, and I know that that's something that comes with the docking collar of the Legionnaire, but being able to have ones that are deployable, because they had those way back when Ilphonic was working on Star Marine. So
You're basically talking about BF 2042 with the dude who can pull out the ballistic shield and just run at you as you empty your magazine into a shield.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's basically that as a breaching technique would not go amiss, right?
No, we're not.
So, I mean, that would certainly allow you to at least get out of the fatal funnel enough to begin a firefight versus, just dying.
Yeah.
Normandy Beach style, as they just gun you down inside your ship. So
Yeah, you send the guys in with heavy armor first, and a breaching shield. The guy behind them, hand on the back and leaning around the side to fire, like a submachine gun. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. That's what you're gonna need, I feel like, or something. You're gonna have to defeat that funnel thing. Otherwise, people are never gonna bother to board. And like I said, you might have a
funnel
chance.
thing.
Would you call it the fatal funnel?
Fatal
Is that
funnel.
a term?
Yes, it is.
Is that a term?
It is.
That's a real.
Yeah,
that's a
I told you
real
guys, I
thing.
was relying on you. I'm relying
He's like the funnel thing.
today.
My cop's like, hey, can we get to the damage control already? You people with your
I wanna talk
funnels
about boarding.
and your measuring cups.
I just look. I told you guys. I was like, you guys are more combat oriented than me. Please, I'm going to rely on you for the boarding action stuff. I can tell you how it looks like from the inside. I mean, a little bit because we train that way. And ultimately, though, I know what it looks like. And when you got 3 hatches that are at best a meter wide, and those are your only 3 entry points, and I've got a few weapons lockers, a couple with light machine guns. I've got shotguns, pistols, that I can arm easily 6 to 7 people strategically near one of these access points to just, shatter whoever walks in first.
Yeah,
unless they've got things like, right. Unless they've got things like grenades and, some kind of means to protect themselves on that initial entry. And that's why I say like shock and awe is probably the best tool,
Well,
and
this
it's
gets
really
back to roles of the boarding team, right? So let's use the tools that we've already talked about. If you have, for instance, if you're boarding,
that's actually a good question that we didn't add in there, and this can be our sort of last
roles
one before we move
of
to
the boarders
damage control. Yeah, the roles within your boarding team.
So if you think about it, you come into Corsair, you've got the room, right? They may or may not decide to defend there, but then once you break out of that room where the airlock is, you have a left and a right in that little central corridor. You're going to have at least 2 guys with shields that are going to break off, right, and just start basically blocking as you advance, right, and sucking up fire. So
and they have to have good timing.
And they have to, right. So you're going to have to count that down. You're going to have to do all of the things. There's some videos out there of Milsim guys who do a really good job of this stuff. But then you have to, everybody in the stack, right? The 4-man, 5-man, 6-man stack that's boarding has to know exactly what they're doing. So, you could either clear up one way and just completely cordon off another, the rear of the cargo bay of the ship, right? And clear forward through the crew areas, which is probably where they're defending. Or you could, split depending on the size of your team and clear both at the same time. But you would have to have people who are, specifically door breachers, people who are specifically earmarked as medics, people who are specifically earmarked to be, the first guy through the door. And to be perfectly honest, it's not necessarily about this is going to be your only job the entire time we're in the mission, right? Because if the first guy through the door goes down, the second guy is now the first guy. So you have to know everybody's job reasonably well so that at a minimum you can now pick up where you've left off, right? So, gosh,
Yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of positions. I mean, you can go through all kinds of infantry handbooks and look up all the various additional duties that individual soldiers have, from medic to grenadiers to crew serve to ammo bearers to prisoner guys, right? So like if you take prisoners, specific guys who are designated to come forward and hold prisoners. I don't know that we're going to get a lot of that in Star Citizen, but
you got the whole restraining people thing coming. I'm
Well,
curious how that works. But
that's the other thing I think about is you have your I don't want to use the word hard, but your hard members of the boarding team, the team that is the people who are focused on combat, if that's the aim. But then, you, like you said, you talked about the medic, you don't put your medic 1 and 2 in the stack. They are protected. They're towards the rear. So I'm a medic because I'm smart. But you want those guys, behind the main advance in order to, they might, the medic and someone else might secure a junction in passageways within a ship as the rest of the team advances, and then they move up, as the next portion of the ship is cleared, in order to keep up with them. But the other sort of soft members within that team, you might have somebody who is an engineering specialist, who is going to,
he's just pulling out
well,
what are they
could be looking
uses
for
as he goes? Relays. He's ripping out relays as they go. He's
Well,
just
they might be
shutting the
looking
ship
for an
down.
engineering console in order to.
Idea though, like it's really not, because it's one of those things. Like if you've got the ship disabled from like a distortion standpoint, talk about an advantage you bring to the table and a way to extend your 5 minutes. The way they have it now, where it's like you're down for 5 minutes, and it's like, well, we got one guy at the back of the team who's literally going to start taking down relays until he gets to the major power plant. But ultimately, what you've done is cripple the ship and ensure that it can't get away. And maybe the priority is exactly that. It's like, hey, we want this long term. We don't have enough time within that 5 minutes to accomplish all of our objectives. So the goal is we are breaching and we're heading straight for engineering and taking every fuse that we can on the way to prevent them from undocking and escaping. And then ultimately the goal is to disable their power plant, and then we move from there.
Yeah, because if your engineer can get a hold of an engineering console in order to give your fighting team an advantage by opening and closing doors, maybe restoring gravity to an area, either to give your guys an advantage or the defending team a disadvantage, that's a piece of the gameplay that I think is really vital, and you want to protect that guy so that way you can have that tactical advantage as you're going through the boarding process on a larger ship. And
man, imagine that gameplay associated with bringing an engineer, by the way, that knows exactly which relays need to come out first in order to like sequentially. Yeah, but I mean, like, imagine there's probably a strategy to like minimize time.
Yeah.
To get to the point where it's like, okay, these disable the turrets on this side of the ship. These won't be coming back up. Like, yeah. I love the idea of the engineer in the back leading the team, like right, next left, and he's just pulling relays as they go, and knows exactly how to take down a hammerhead, in quick order.
So it is interesting. Well, so one of the dudes said that he thinks it'll be frag spam when you board. It depends on how they manage grenades inside a ship, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know how far they'll push. What do they call it? I want to say damage matrix, but I'm not sure that's the right term. But
what my fear is short term. Have you guys seen videos of people throwing like a Pico or some small innocuous device inside of a ship?
And then
like it just beeping inside of it, and they throw it against a wall, and it starts ping-ponging around so much, and then all of a sudden the ship explodes. Well, like it literally does that much damage internally. And don't be wrong, that's like a bug. But it's one of those things is like they haven't worked out like how to deal with internal damage for the most part.
Well, so that goes all the way back to that old bug in the 2 point whatever days when you would get in and your pistol would vibrate on your hip.
Yeah,
And
it would
it would be bouncing against the cockpit's interior, and then you would just explode because it was doing one tick of damage every time it vibrated. And so I think if grenades are, I think grenades are probably not the thing that CIG envisions you clearing a ship with. Maybe if again, go back to the Corsair, if they're just holding down the chow area where the crew quarters are, and that's where they're, you might pop a couple grenades in there, and let that be it. But that's going to be a calculated decision, because if you think about it, you're just putting more holes in the hull, you're doing more damage, you're lowering the value of the ship if you're a pirate, you're lowering the value of the ship if you're a privateer who wants to sell that. You're
potentially killing your target, whether it's a bounty or someone you're rescuing.
You could be killing your target or somebody you're rescuing. I don't know how much. I think it just depends on the situation whether or not spamming grenades. And then again, they've said like eventually if the ship takes enough damage, it will explode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'd worry about.
You disable it. So I mean, you pitch a grenade in the wrong place, like the engine room or something like that.
Yeah.
You might just blow the ship right there, and then everybody inside is just kind of sad on
that. You throw a grenade and you start a fire. And you throw a grenade, you start a fire in a room that you're trying to advance into. They back up out of that room. That room's on fire, and you
that would be so sick, though. Come on.
Yeah.
I have
the room's on fire. You just back away and make the existing crew deal with that fire, and you just wait for them.
So there's a and I don't want to say famous, but it is famous. There's a famous picture of my old platoon during the Battle of the Joff in 2004 of a bunch of our guys running through a room of a burning building, and it's on fire because we threw grenades into that building in order to make entry, and we're trying to get into that building to capture high value targets to get intel, like you guys were talking about. Not only are we trying to capture high value targets, we're trying to get intel about where more high value targets are. But everything caught on fire. They had all sorts of like blankets because they were living in there, and it all caught on fire. And we're trying to fight our way through a room that is in flames, charged with smoke, in order to get to the second floor where they were still putting up a fight. And so like that's we know fire propagation is going to be a thing in game, and if you don't have an engineer who can vent the atmosphere of the room that you're trying to make your way through, that fire could be, cause you some real problems. Slow down your boarding action, your mission. It could cause problems for the people that you're attacking, as well, but also it's a double-edged sword.
Indeed, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
What's 9? So we need to shift targets.
Oh, yep. We were just about to get
told you were bad at this. I told you were bad at this.
No,
I'll try and keep us on track.
7 minutes behind.
I was about to transition us, but then we started talking about that last bit, and so we're hanging out right at about an hour for this segment. But